Good Shabbos PJC, Shabbat Shalom. I hope everyone is doing well and feeling good. This week, Shabbos Parshas Bo, we come to the conclusion of the terrible exile in Egypt, and we begin the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the Exodus. We are told of the commands for the Jewish people to feast together and to be with each other, to offer the sacrifice, the Korban Pesach. And the Torah says, if there are not enough people to eat, to consume the Korban Pesach in your family, invite another family over. Bring another family into your home, so that in order you have enough mouths to feed, to ensure that you can finish the Korban Pesach. Halavai, how the simplest of acts, having guests at our table, has become the most elusive for us. Before we reach the Korban Pesach, before we reach the Makkah, the plague of Makas Bechoros, the introductory plague, if you will, the final plague before the last major plague that frees the Jewish people, is the Makkah, is the plague of Choshech. Choshech is described in a number of different ways. But specifically, the darkness was described as thick, as heavy, as enveloping any light that was available. Even if an Egyptian were to light a candle, it would have no effect on the darkness that was invading and overtaking their world. And the pasuk says, Lo ra'u ish es achiv, v'lo kamu ish mitachtav shloshet yamim. The impact of this plague was that for 3 days, for 3 long, terrible days, Egyptian was not able to see Egyptian. Lo kamu ish mitachtav shloshet yamim. For 3 days, they could not get out. Lo kamu ish mitachtav is a very strange language, essentially meaning they could not get out from under themselves, because they could not see another Egyptian. The Chiddushei Harim, one of the classic late Ger Rabbis who has beautiful insights on the Parsha, says something so simple but extraordinary, exquisite, and reassuring during this time. Why does the Torah use the language of Lo kamu ish mitachtav? They couldn't get out from under themselves. Because the plague of Choshech, the plague of darkness, was the challenge of isolation. The Chiddushei Harim says something so hopeful, so inspiring. He says, and listen carefully, he says, if you want to get out from under your own inertia, if you want to make spiritual progress, if you want to be inspired, if you want to grow, the way to do it is to see your friend. The way to do it is to connect with someone else. We know this to be true professionally. We know this to be true in the gym. We know this to be true in many parts of our lives. If I'm working out by myself in the gym, not so great. But if I have a buddy that I'm working out with, I'm inspired. Look at that guy. Look at what he's doing. Look at what she's doing. Look at her intensity. The people around us impact us so profoundly, so deeply. And so when the Mitzrim, when they were isolated, when they were by themselves, they couldn't get out from themselves. They couldn't stop thinking within themselves. They couldn't imagine what they would want to be true for our future, for their future. One of the greatest challenges of these last 10 months. Second to the suffering, second obviously to the death, second to the difficulty of protecting life, but nevertheless a great challenge has been this isolation that we've experienced. How we have suffered spiritually because we don't have an environment where we are propelled by the other person, where we are inspired by the sincerity, by the intensity, by the spiritual sanctity of another person. Lo ra'u ish es achiv. They couldn't see their brother. They couldn't see their sister. And therefore, lo kamu ish mishtachtav, they could never get past themselves. The Chiddushei Harim says it's no coincidence that the Talmud tells us the moment that you are supposed to recite Kriya Shema in the morning, the first moment in the morning, when you are supposed to have that sense of awe, when you are supposed to recognize that Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad, when you are supposed to recognize that God is our God, He is one. He is all-powerful, He is all-loving, He is all-forgiving. The first moment of every single day, you are supposed to recognize that. It's not Alos HaShacha, it's not Neitz HaChama, it's not with the beginning of the sunrise or the first light of the day. It's not a specific time, but rather, the Talmud tells us, Mishe Yakir es Chavero, the time for Kriya Shema, the time for sincere spiritual expression, for the daily battle cry of the Jewish people, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, is Mishe Yakir es Chavero, is when it's light enough outside for you to recognize your friend. Because you cannot have that spiritual elevation. You cannot make the declaration of Shema in isolation, alone. The natural inclination in sanctity, in Kedusha, is to think that it can be found in solitude. Is to think we don't need each other to be sanctified. In fact, it's much easier for me to keep mitzvot. It's much easier for me to be motivated. It's much easier for me to be holy if I don't have to compromise my values, if I don't have to think about others. And what Choshech drives home, in the moments before the Jewish people were freed, what it drives home is that they needed to shift their thinking and understand how important it was to start thinking about each other. When you're a slave, your entire existence is consumed by your selfish need. The way you survive is by thinking of yourself first and exclusively. But to go from a slave, to go from enslaved to sanctified, you need to start thinking about others, to share meals with others, to move out of isolation and to think about the inspiration that others provide us in our lives. Yehi Ratzon, may it be God's will, that very, very soon, we have the opportunity to share meals with each other and to move out of this choshech that we have experienced, to move beyond it, and to safely inspire and connect with each other. I hope and I pray that we continue to be healthy, that Amir Tzah Hashem, please God, we will get to the place we need to get to. We will experience the exodus from this tremendous challenge, and we will see the light. As the beautiful poet said yesterday, we will see the light and we will be the light. And we will share beautiful and inspiring spiritual times with each other and be inspired by each other. Wishing everyone a Shabbat Shalom, a warm and inspiring and a safe Shabbos.